This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. I'm your host, James Hartman, and we have a fascinating conversation tonight, talking about beyond the school walls and how technology is shaping alternate provision. My guest, Aisha Allen. This will be a conversation not to miss.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome. It is Friday, the 4th of October, and thank you for those who are joining us live or listening back on any of the favourite podcasting apps out there on Teachers Talk Radio. Don't forget to rate us and give us that feedback, because that's really helpful at getting our voices out there, getting educators' voices out there and sharing their stories. Now, tonight is going to be a really interesting conversation, something that is very much prevalent at the moment in our sector, but something new, something different, an online school that's about alternate provision and how technology is shaping that option for SEND children and how it's reshaping those opportunities for those vulnerable learners, for those learners who are not in school. And so I'm delighted to be joined by Aisha tonight, who tells a little bit more about herself and the history she has. And I know she's got a fantastic story, and I'm not going to give anything away at the moment. So good evening, Aisha. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to speak to you this evening. And I like the idea that I've got an exciting story. I've got a weird story. That's definitely true. Unusual.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. And every time I meet you, there's always a nugget of something, isn't there, that you tell me. I was like, oh my God, wow.
I have a weird past. That's definitely true. I didn't get the traditional route into education. And I think that it's one of those weird things, isn't it? The older that you get and the longer you spent in teaching, the more that you realise that all those things you did before and all that life experience you had before you got into the classroom informs how you behave when you're in the classroom. And so for me, I think there's definitely like some strengths that I've developed that mean I'm a good practitioner, and some things that I've had to overcome to be a good practitioner. And you get more and more self-aware. And I hope as I continue through my career and get closer to retirement, I'll have even more of them. But at the moment, yeah, definitely there is some history there that helps me to be who I am as a teacher, which I like.
So for the audience then, can you introduce who you are? What's the essence and what's the purpose of why you're so invested in what you're doing at the moment, and take us through part of that journey, and we may unpick bits and pieces as you go through.
You'll probably have to unpick all of it because it's pretty bizarre. So I'm Aisha Allen. I am a maths teacher, a school leader. But when I left university, the first thing I did was I went to go and get a job working in the music industry, because I thought that was probably going to be my best use of my time. And it was fun. I mean, it was really fun. I worked as an agent for a jazz touring company. And I realised after not all that long, probably about 18 months, that the thing that I really liked was trying to connect people with their passion. I really liked the idea of taking something that was really special and interesting and connecting it with an audience. And actually, that was the thing that I felt passionate about. And I realised that that's teaching. Taking a thing that you care deeply about and connecting it with an audience is teaching. And so I went back and reassessed my life and decided I needed to become a maths teacher, obviously. I don't know how anybody would think any otherwise. And went and did Teach First. Did the Teach First programme. I found my way into the classroom. I have taught various schools across the south. I've never taught in the north. It's probably time, but I've taught in the south of England. And obviously, after sort of learning my trade, loving maths education, having a gorgeous time learning to become a maths teacher, there was an opportunity came up to come and become a founding member of East London Arts and Music, ELAM, which is just the most incredible, special place. So I got to be part of the founding team there. And East London Arts and Music is a school that links young people with a passion for games design, film, and music to their chosen industry. So having like actually worked in the music industry and then having this opportunity to teach maths to young people who wanted to go and follow that path just felt like, stars aligning. And it was somewhere that I was supposed to be. And so I did that. We built up that school for 8 years, and I absolutely loved it. And I progressed through becoming an assistant principal there, and doing lots of partnerships. So learning like a strength for myself was around kind of helping people to find our school and contribute to our school and collaborate with us, and being quite outward facing. And then I guess I got to the point where I felt like they just didn't need me anymore, which is lovely to have felt like you've served your purpose and done all the things, set up all the things you needed to do. They just didn't need me anymore. And I felt like I needed to go somewhere where my skills were more needed. And I guess what I found was there was this huge gulf, which sadly it keeps getting bigger, of children who have not returned to the classroom post-COVID. And this opportunity came up to work with Salutum Care and Education, to support young people who are finding it difficult to access traditional classrooms now. So I set up this online provision. We're technically not a school, so the way that we deliver is quite small numbers of hours over a week. So it's kind of like supposed to be building children back to the place where they feel ready to get back into a classroom. And it is hard. I've had to do all of the trauma-informed and attachment training and learning all of that there is to learn about that part of the puzzle, and learning how the care system works, or in some cases doesn't work very effectively. And so rewarding, so like a billion times more rewarding than anything I've ever done, because when you bring a child back to education, you are saving their life. And I just genuinely believe that. And now I am doing that as part of this job, and also I get to work in partnership with special schools. So that means that I get to kind of deliver specialist education into a school where they might not have a specialist teacher because of the kinds of different issues that they're dealing with. So, they might have lots and lots of different special educational needs. So, and just one or two children who desperately need a GCSE, because that's the level that we're working at. So I'm getting to do that as well, which means I get to connect all of the different interesting bits of what I do. And yeah, it's really fun.
What a journey. I've written down a few things there, and it's that connecting people to their passion. And that's something you've done all the way through. It's caring deeply about it, and it's how can you find that in a world away from that traditional classroom? And so you've had a very unusual aspect on it, and I think that's the fascinating bit. So tell us about what ELAM, when you talk to me about it, the arts and music and that games design, it's very different to a traditional school. So can you give us a little bit more of a picture? Because I had a great conversation with Scott Hayden last one, and we talked about rethinking assessment.
Yes.
And what that looks like in further education and higher education as well. And you really hit the nail on the head at ELAM as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
So ELAM is completely dedicated to project-based learning. It's just like, it's not like project-based learning is a lovely thing that you might do on the side whilst you're really just teaching some lessons. It's like project-based learning is the be-all and end-all. And when you are a games designer or a filmmaker, like how else are you going to learn? Like the whole point is to make a film, to make a game. So they design the entire curriculum around projects, and you have these discrete projects over the years. So over 2 years, they do 7 projects. And, you know, you come in and you make a game, and then you learn all the discrete skills as you go along, and you build into those skills. And then you evaluate your game, and then you move on to the next project. So that kind of idea around project-based learning being the center of what vocational education should be just was so fundamental to what they do. It was really, really special, and it's completely changed how I teach as a maths teacher, because I'm so much more invested in the idea that project-based learning, rich tasks, those big projects, and coming back and having that golden thread that can carry on for more than one lesson, trusting children that you can have a golden thread that runs for a week or 2 weeks or 5 weeks, you keep coming back to this idea, these like key ideas, is really, really magic. And it's so much more effective, particularly when you're doing something like vocational education, but also particularly when you've got a child who is hard to reach, because you are rewarding them for returning. If you're working towards a film, if you're making a film and that film is going to take 4 weeks to make, you've got a reason to keep turning up. And it's not like, oh, I missed yesterday, and so like, oh, there's no point in going in for the rest of the term. No, you've got to keep going back. You've got to keep returning and building the skills and building towards an end game. And the sense of completion that you get when you have finished the thing and then you have a thing you can show is so crucial for so many young people, but particularly for young people who've got trauma, and for young people who've got trauma around education, particularly like post-COVID. That idea of like, I've been working towards this thing and now I have it and I can show it and I can display it, is really magic. So that was really key to what they do at ELAM. And the other thing, which was something that I worked a lot on when I was kind of in my assistant principal role, was the idea that you because you know what the project is going to be. So for example, I'm working on a documentary film. You can then go out to industry and say, hello, you're a documentary filmmaker. Would you come and mentor this project? So you can bring people in who are experts in their field, who can give those crucial moments of support and feedback that is industry standard, and say, tell me how good this is. And then you get to actually, once the young people have moved away, you then get to have that conversation with the industry person and say, how good is this compared to what's coming in from the industry, and then adjust your curriculum to make it better. So if they say it's really, really good, the color grade is incredible, but the sound is naff, you then say, okay, well, the next unit, we're going to really focus in on sound and make sure that they're bringing that level up, so that they know that when they're leaving us at the end of 2 years, they are an industry standard professional. So it's really, really revolutionized how I understand education to be, because obviously I trained in kind of, quite a traditional environment where people would sort of like, we all kind of learned from the book, and it was how to do the different bits in the classroom, and here's your list of skills, and you will all know the list of skills by the end of the year. But the idea of like, if you think really deeply about how your curriculum is going to work over a space of a year, and you push for excellence, and you get feedback from external feedback, and you give children a sense of completion, it's so much better. And I don't know why we don't do it all the time. We're all afraid to do it for some reason.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's been definitely a thing about depth, not breadth, when we're looking at the curriculum, but also this idea of project-based education. Do you think it's something that could work through primary and secondary? And is it something that, like the curriculum review that the DfE are going through as well, is that something that would be relevant for them?
I 100% think so. I think that a lot of people do it and they don't realise they're doing it. And for a lot of teachers, the bit in their year where they're like, this was the best bit, is a project. Most teachers will reflect on something that they do in the year and they're like, that's the magic bit. But they maybe feel like it's harder to pinpoint what the progress is through that magic bit, other than everybody in my classroom fell in love with the subject. Like I used to do stats projects, even, right back when I first started teaching, I would do a stats project and I would let the students kind of choose something that they wanted to work on, and we'd find a data set, and then we'd work through that stats project and surprise ourselves with the outcomes. But like when you actually look at the number of discrete skills that you've taught them that are going to be on the GCSE, you think, oh, panic, that's not enough in that time period. So it's not good. But the depth of understanding they've got and the passion for the subject they've got is better. And it's kind of like accepting that it might take longer to get through the list of skills, but those list of skills are going to be nailed is just really, really difficult, I think, especially when you teach like a core subject and you know that you've got to get to an end point and you know that end point is like however many progress 8 points. It's really difficult to throw that out, but it really does make a difference. And I think that we need to kind of get on board with project-based learning in a way that maybe we haven't been able to thus far. I've been able to do it because my curriculum, because effectively we're an alternate provision. So I'm not expecting to necessarily take my students all the way to a terminal exam. So I'm just focused on making them love my subject. And so I can say, right, well, we're just going to learn these things. And these things are going to be learned in a project-based scenario. And it's going to be great. And we're going to have a really lovely time together. And I'm here to make you fall in love with education again. So let's just focus on that. But I recognize that if I was in a more traditional classroom, it would be hard. It's hard. I recognize why people don't do it. Do you do it?
And it's beholden to the assessment systems, and they just all fall back down, don't they? And I think one of the things about ELAM is that you still taught English and maths, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and you taught the foundation there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really key element. When someone you say about was an arts and music and we do games design, actually you've taught those foundations. Yes, you're linking it to. So you may be looking at the taxes or you're looking at some other element of it, but actually those foundational skills that they can use are relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I think that the way that English is taught, so at ELAM, English is taught as part of the EPQ. So it's a project that they do, an independent project, the EPQ, but they teach, instead of teaching how to do an EPQ necessarily, they teach them how to write beautiful whatever. So they can choose what they want to do, but it has to be a literacy-based project. So they can make a podcast, they can make a creative writing, they can write a novel. There was a child who wrote a choose your own adventure, which I thought was amazing, but felt very sorry for the people marking it because there was a lot of pages. And, they get to choose something that they're going to follow through, but the skills they've learned about like how to research and how to redraft and how to sort of immerse themselves in an art and a style. Those are all the skills that you need, but it's just taught in a way that says, go and find your thing and run with it, and let's love it together and be involved with it and have a sense of complete. And at the end, you've made this beautiful thing. You've made a novel, or you've got a collection of poems that you are going to look back on when you're 90 and be proud of. And that's not how you would normally teach English at sixth form, but it is what works, and it makes the young people love the subject. And with maths, maths was probably the last one across the finish line in terms of like how to make it project based, but how to make it relevant, how to make it connect it to the young people's lives. We did a lot of stuff where it was like a project where you're looking at running a business and how much what's your income going to be, what tax will you pay on it, how will you critical path analysis, those kinds of things, all linking in, which are skills you're going to need if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to be run a record label or a production company. So it all kind of fit together beautifully. And that was not for lack of, we tried, we made that happen. It didn't just like magically happen overnight. We all were really passionate about making it work like that. And as a result, it worked like that. But that happens because you find these magic people who will care about something really deeply and want to push it in that direction. But yeah, it was an amazing place to work. I still have a lot of love for it. And I showed on LinkedIn recently, I got invited to a gig, which was two students that I taught launching their album. And it's just the best feeling in the world, getting to see them do that thing. So yeah, really magic place.
That's amazing. And I going through that, I was thinking I've got a belief that we want children to be motivated about learning. I don't like the word engaging, because if you're motivated about something, whether it's your game design or your music or the writing of the different options, that sounds fascinating. And yeah, I can imagine marking that'd be a nightmare.
Yeah.
The different chapters, and I can imagine my son in year 2, he would love that. He would love to go down that route of actually creating his own options, but because it's motivation, isn't it? Because you want to learn, you want to explore it, you want to go into depth.
And then it's then layering on top of that the idea that's like, okay, you're making a thing that you love. Come over here. Let me show you how you can make it just a little bit better. Like, let's look at how redrafting, let's pick out, you've used this same word too many times. Let's start thinking about how we could expand the vocabulary. Let's look at how other people have expressed that same idea, and just showing them that being mentored, doing the research, going out and finding a way forward is valuable. And it's the old thing of learning to learn, isn't it? It's learning the skills for getting better at something, and trusting your teachers and trusting yourself as well. That process means that you're ending up with great creatives who understand that the process of creation isn't just like wake up in the morning, write a song, done. That it's going to take years and years. And one of the things I really love actually is I've got like a student at the moment. If you are a passionate music person, please go and listen to Cairo's new EP. It's just out this week. Cairo is a student that I taught years ago now, who has been working at this craft. What he has understood is that you take time over it because it matters, and you keep working and redrafting and finding your tribe and just chipping away at it over time. And it's taken him a really long time to get there, but it's perfect. He has brought this album into the world that is perfect. And I think when you work at a music school, especially a music school where, there's lots of young people who are looking to get signed, there's this like feeling that you want to get all of them signed by the time they walk out through the door. And I'm like, no, I don't, that's not what we wanted. It was more like, we want lots of really brilliantly successful 30-year-olds. And that might mean that the first 5 years after they leave might be quite quiet, but I want them to know that that's their passion, to know that they're going to work at it, and that there's an end point where they are successful. And that I care about much more, and that they'll love their art. And that I care about much more. And I think that the same thing with my students, like my students now, when I'm working online, it's so much more exciting if I find out that they told somebody about something that they've learned in a lesson, or that they've mentioned that they can add numbers in binary. That's so much, because then I know that they've taken it away and they find it interesting, and they're thinking about it outside of our time together. Or that they're reading a book, or that they're telling somebody about poetry. That's so much better than they did really well in this assessment, because I know that they're going to take that with them through their life. And that's what tempts them back to education, this idea that actually I can learn, and it is quite interesting, and learning is not something I need to be scared of. And it's not about an exam or getting a qualification. It's about self-improvement and respect for myself, and a journey that I want to go on forever. So, yeah.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK. Home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development program, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway. built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
Teachers, mark your calendars for BetUK 2025, the world's biggest EdTech event. Join over 30,000 educators at the Excel London from the 22nd to the 24th of January. Discover the latest EdTech innovations, network with peers and access hundreds of hours of CPD. Did we mention it's 100% free for educators? Whether you're looking for inspiration or practical tools to enhance your teaching, BET has it all. Don't miss this opportunity to shape the future of education. Register today at uk.betshow.com. That's uk.betshow.com.
And don't forget to come to the Bet Show, because last year that's where Aisha and I first met, and we've been talking ever since. I want to move on to SEN and thinking about how would you describe the provision in the UK at the moment, because it's huge, it's diverse, and obviously COVID has had a massive impact on where that is and what we do with that.
Okay. It's difficult to talk about the SEN provision in the UK without getting very wound up. There was recently, I don't know if you saw it, but there was a Women's Hour on Radio 4 where they highlighted some of the key issues, and they spoke to mothers, and it was just heartbreaking, the number of children who are not able to access a provision that is suitable for them. The number of children who are being told, or the number of parents being told, we cannot eat mead. Their number of children who don't seem to fit into the box is just really, really worrying. And there are some really brilliant SEN provisions across the UK, some really brilliant ones. And they cannot provide enough, because the numbers are increasing. The pictures of the complexity of the need is changing. And we're still in situations where we've got SEN schools where, you've got just like the widest possible range of needs trying to be met in one place, and it just doesn't seem to quite work. So yeah, it's a scary place, I think, for people to navigate. It's a scary place for local authorities in that they know that the numbers of children who need specialist provisions are increasing. They just don't have anywhere to put them, and they don't know what to do with them. Building and providing for children with complex needs is really expensive, and yeah, it's complicated and difficult and sad at the moment. I was speaking to a head teacher recently who had a child who it wasn't a good fit for that child, but they were saying, I don't know what to do because I don't know, there is nowhere else. There are no other schools. The waiting lists are horrendous. There are, we know that no one else will take them, but we also know that this isn't the right place for them. And It's really, really difficult. So, yeah, it's a worrying place. And the only solution is that we're going to need to innovate, and we're going to need to be forward thinking, and we're going to need some local authorities to really embrace the idea that they're going to have to change up the picture in order to provide, because this isn't going to work. As things stand, it's not going to work. And that's, the provision that I'm providing, that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're creating an alternative option to help young people who are stuck. And I think there are more and more online schools are a great option for young people who are unable to kind of find what they need in the traditional classroom. I think that we need to do more in that space. There need to be more special schools who are providing online provision. And we need to think about that as being a really healthy thing instead of maybe a negative thing. And we need to make sure that those online schools are well, quality assured, because they are going to be the future. And we need to kind of get on board with that, I guess.
Why do you think then it feels like it's getting worse? What's the root of the problem at the moment? Is it that we're more aware? Is it that COVID has such a impact on everything? Or is it that something with our traditional schooling of getting them through the assessments has now come to a pinch point?
All of the above. I mean, when we look at like the extreme end of, PMLD provisions where things are really, really complicated, you're just seeing children who would not have survived. Neonatal care is different, and you have complex needs which need to be met in a special school, and that means that means that they're squeezed. There's no space there at all. So then children who might have traditionally fit into that picture, where do they then go? So they then move on to the next provision. Everything's then shoved up the line. So there's that issue. There are, I think that there are impacts from COVID that we're still seeing kind of the other end of. We broke the big lie. The big lie was you have to go to school because otherwise, and then it was like, well, we didn't go to school. So, and what happened? So the big lie is dead. Everyone knows that that's no longer the case. And as a result, you're seeing schools really creaking at the seams when it comes to trying to bring back some of those, long-term school refusers. And EBSA is just through the roof. And that's definitely part of the problem. The trust in the system, lots of groups no longer trust the system for various reasons. And as a result, you're seeing parents just saying, I don't want this. I don't want to be involved in this. So there's that part as well. But I think there's just the numbers, the understanding, everything has changed, but the system is still the same as it was. The number of places is still the same as it was way before COVID. And as a result, we're now in a place where there's just literally hundreds of thousands of children not accessing anything at all. There are hundreds of thousands of children missing in education. And the majority of them are children with a special educational need. Not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but the majority. And that is unacceptable in my mind. We are failing them. And we need to find a way to bring those children back into the classroom. And if those classrooms need to look different, then we need to make the classrooms look different. Like we can't just kind of expect the problem to just go away. I do feel like we've been for the last sort of 5 years, everyone's just been hoping the problem would go away. And that like, if we ignored the children who were missing for long enough, everyone would just forget about them. And I'm really glad to see that we're not forgetting about them. I have a massive amount of respect for Rachel D'Souza and the work that she does at the Children's Commission, just banging her drum saying, no, this is not okay, and we're not letting this die. We're going to keep raising the voices of those children. And it like I said, it's like SEND education isn't all about EBSA. EBSA isn't all about SEND children. The children missing in education picture is very complex, but 20% of children who are missing in education, and that means that like either they we don't know where they are, or they are not on roll somewhere. 20% of them come from the first centile of deprivation. So like they just like, that's incredibly worrying. And once they're not in the system, the safeguards and everything else kind of just disappears. And now I work a lot with young people in care. And often you're seeing a child who has been sort of, in inverted commas, homeschooled and then has disappeared. And it's been a really long time before someone went, whatever happened to that child? Went and did some investigation and found just a whole world of mess. And that is a story we are hearing again and again and again, where somebody has taken themselves out of the game. You know, our systems are set up in society to keep children safe in schools. So if they're not in schools, we're not keeping them safe, because we don't have the situation around that child to be able to support them elsewhere. So it's terrifying, and it makes me very, very sad. And we have to, the whole thing needs a rethink, just a complete rethink from the bottom up. There are some local authorities that I'm working with who are incredibly innovative and really starting to think about, like, what does early intervention look like? How do we support children to, access the services that we support? There are some brilliant virtual schools, and virtual schools, not online schools, virtual schools, as in they, are responsible for overseeing the education of a young person who is in care or care experienced. Like, there are some incredible ones across the country doing some great work, but we have to. The whole thing needs a rethink, and that has to come down to local authorities. I think when I first started teaching, I remember thinking, like, we're all MATs now. What's a local authority for? I don't know if you ever thought. I'm like, what is the local authority for? Now I understand the local authority is for all of that other stuff, and a lot of their work now is finding provisions that are correct for vulnerable young people, whether those young people are SEND or whether they are SEMH or complex pictures or vulnerable in other ways, whether they are looked after or care experienced. All of those children are the responsibility of the local authority. They have a tiny little pot of money that they are trying to stretch in every which way. And we have to bring them all together, rethink the whole system, find a way to move things forward, because it's just not working. Sorry, that was a really long rant, and I could have gone on for ages more.
No, and I think there's a mindset change here needed as well, because for too long, we have used the phrase bottom 20%, and that's within the children, within the classroom. Well, actually, no, they're the first 20%. Get the teaching right for them, and everyone can thrive. But the thousands who aren't engaged in school, they're the worry. They're the ones. So how do you then work to re-engage them within the education system? Because that is a huge challenge and a huge difference to what most educators within a school, yes, they know that there are these challenges, but don't have that understanding of what you do almost.
There are so many layers to it. I think the first thing is, like, everything we do is sort of trauma informed. I know trauma informed is something that's thrown around everywhere, but we have really spent a lot of time thinking about, like, if you have experienced extreme trauma within the education system for whatever reason, which has pushed you to the point where you do not want to engage in school at all anymore, how do we then rebuild the relationship with a teacher, with yourself as a learner, and with education to mean that you want to get back into a classroom? And there are lots of layers there. So there's a part of it where it's saying we're building up their skills so that when they do go back in, they know that they do know something, so that they're not like starting from scratch. Because a lot of the time when you drag a school refuser back into school, they're sitting there thinking, well, I've missed 6 months, or 3 years. So what the hell is everybody talking about? So there's that piece, building their skills so that they feel confident in the classroom. There's the piece that's, as we talked about before, project-based learning, helping them to fall back in love with the idea of education, with themselves as a learner, and building relationships with teachers. This teacher can be trusted. The teacher will give you feedback on your work. This teacher will help you to get better. This teacher will be here for you every day. And there's not going to be like long periods of absence and things like that, because this teacher is working from home and has some flexibility and has lots of support, which means that they are able to get online the same time every day and be here when you're ready. So there's lots of stuff there that we do to kind of build that. We made some really clear decisions about how the tech was going to work. And we've made decisions about basically providing the child with a device, which has been really key. So it means that we have quite a lot of control over the safeguarding and the security for really vulnerable children, which means that we can kind of provide a lot of safeguarding support around what we do. Because I think that for me, that piece around, if they're missing from education, they're missing from safeguarding is crucial. And I'm like, we're the eyes for that child. We're the ones who know where they are. Otherwise, like, where are they every day? You know, when you've got a school refuser who doesn't turn up one day, you register on CPOMs. When you've got a school refuser who hasn't turned up for 6 months, everyone's forgotten about them. Like, it's just, and now they're in danger. And we don't follow up in the same way. And often it's like, well, it's kind of the local authority's problem now. And that isn't acceptable. So we do that piece of like re-engaging them with the safeguarding systems, getting in touch with, you know, the social workers or whatever who need to be re-informed in those situations. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we do that is maybe really geared towards very, very vulnerable young people. But what I would say is that none of that stuff is useless when it comes to a not maybe so vulnerable child. Because if it's a school refuser who is suffering with really severe anxiety, but the needs and the history and the whatever is less complex, all of that, you know, building trust, helping them to build their skills, helping them to feel, you know, in love with education again, it's just as good. Works with every child. So there's no harm in any of it. And it works. It gets the kids back in the classroom. I mean, we work with children who've been out of school for 2-3 years and they go back to school full time. You know, 80% of our kids go back into an in-person provision within a year. And the ones that we've struggled to replace, it's usually like, so as in take them and put them back into a placement, it's usually because their care placements are breaking down and they're having to move local authority again. And once those moves happen, you start again from scratch and the process takes a long time. So it has been incredibly rewarding. And like I said this before, but like when you re-engage a child with education, you save their life. Like there's so much evidence that that's the case. Children who don't finish education are so much more likely to end up in prison, so much more likely to end up with severe mental health issues. You know, being able to, and I know correlation and causation and all the other complex things around that, but being able to give them a lifeline that says, this is where you are, this is where you're going, this is who you want to be, means that they're back on track to being able to feel like they can contribute to society, feel like they can support themselves, feel like there is a chance that they can be independent, giving them some hope for the future. And that is incredibly rewarding. I think part of the hardest part for us is that it works. We then get to the point where we're ready to send them back and they want to go back. And then it's the next part, the difficult, tricky bit of like, where do they go? Because like there aren't enough schools. So like then I'm like, there's this bit that I never expected to do where I'm like calling up schools and being like, have you got a place? Like, would you be willing to take this? I know I know what it says on the HCP, but please trust me, like come and meet them, because I really think they would thrive in your environment, which was never supposed to be part of what we do, but realistically that's part of what we have to do. And it's really difficult.
And one of the themes that you keep touching on, and it's also one of the answers, I think, that when people say, oh, technology's taken over and what's the role of a teacher, is the word relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that is key. Everything you are saying at the moment is that relationship you're having. But it does, on a surface level, is a massive juxtaposition against online schooling and digital. So how do you bridge that, and how do you form those relationships? Because without that, you're not going to reintroduce them back into a placement.
It's so interesting because so often early on in the conversation with like the care team around a child, they'll say, I really think they'll respond better to a person in person. And I'm like, I guarantee you're wrong. And I know it's counterintuitive, but I guarantee you're wrong, because I am not a threat. When you are working with a child with extreme trauma around education, social anxiety, complex histories, I am a picture on a screen. And so they will talk to me. And the number of times I have heard the sentence, oh my goodness, you've got more out of them in 20 minutes than we've heard out of them in weeks, months, because they can switch me off if they're bored of me. They can hide my face, and they can mute me. Like, it's fine. I don't care. Like, they are so much more willing to engage with me because I am not scary. And so they don't have to get into that trauma, fight and flight. They don't have to get there. They can feel in control of it. And so we can have an open discussion, we can have a conversation, and we can start to build relationships, and we can focus on the work instead of like the social dynamic of the room and all the other complex stuff, like how it smells, how it feels, how hot it is, all of that stuff that is in their control. All we have to think about is the relationship and the work. And so it's so much easier to build all those other things. And then the last little bit becomes get into the classroom. And that means that when they are ready, because they've done all the other work with us of like building the relationship with the teacher, finding a trusted adult, feeling confident about themselves as a learner, having the skills to ready to go back into the classroom, when they're ready, all they have to deal with is the social bit. And that's what I want them to get to. But that has to be the last piece, because I don't know if you remember being a teenager, but if I needed to worry about the social piece, that was all I was thinking about. There was no way I was doing anything else. So if that's like how your brain is working and you are preoccupied with like, who's looking at me, who's thinking about me, is there something in my teeth? Then, and on top of that, all of those other things that I described, like, do I trust the teacher? Can I learn? Is this work too hard? Do I even like learning? If all of those things are gone and all you can think about is the social stuff, then you've got a fighting chance. And I do think there's this, like, I think online education has got maybe a bad name because, like, I think people just think it's like, I've set some work for you. During lockdown, this is what lots of people did. It was, we're going to set work and you're going to do the work, and then we might check on the work, we might not. Whereas, like, one of the things that made me want to do what I'm doing now was back at Elam, we went, no, we're going to go for it. We're going to do fully online lessons every day. There will be a full timetable of live online lessons that will be fully interactive. There will be an expectation to attend them. And we had like 90% attendance over lockdown for our students. They would come to live lessons 90% of the time because the lessons were engaging and interesting, live, interactive. They got to see their friends. It gave them something to do all day. It was wonderful. They loved it. And so I think that, for me, that understanding of that's what online education looks like means that I can carry that forward. Whereas I think a lot of people, that wasn't the experience. And so that's what people think of when they think of online education. And that's not what we're providing at all. We're providing something that is bespoke and meaningful and interesting and engaging. Of course, because we're teachers and that's what we do. That's what all teachers do all the time. That's what teachers want to do. They don't want to set work and then come back to it. Lots of teachers got depressed over lockdown because they wanted to teach.
Yeah. And it's, for me, one of the things is not just the perception of like technology. Yes, it's all consuming, but it's not actually. And I think there's this whole thing about split attention with the cognitive science. I've been talking about it quite a lot within our schools and our trust recently, and the fact that actually the technology allows you to focus on that one key element that you want to do, whether it's something in maths or whether it's that relationship, and everything else goes out the window because you're focusing in depth. And I think our society is not great for this. I think we're all consuming. We're like, we've got to watch this, we've got to keep up on top of that. And we're not mastering. When you talk about mastery, talk about what you're doing in Elam, the project-based learning and how they're going really into depth. Yeah. We're flittering between things. Whereas actually we're not enjoying the beauty of just the time to explore something in depth, properly.
And completion.
Yes, and having something to be proud of.
Yeah. And for our young people, for better or for worse, like the idea of being able to share something online is super exciting. So letting them create something they can share, even if that is I've created it here on my iPad and I'm going to share it with my mum. It's like really exciting. And like, I think we have to just accept that. I'm so sick of this conversation that's like, I'm going to drag the children back to 1960. No, let's meet them where they are. We have to accept the reality that we're in, and we have to start accepting that we need to meet the children where they are. And it is my sort of drum that I bang endlessly. We have to meet them where they are. And for me, that means I have to go and find that child effectively in their home and give them the device so that they can connect with me. And then we can, you know, move to one another in terms of like, you know, their love of education, etc. But like, in general, we have to stop trying to like force square pegs into round holes. We have to meet them where they are. And our children are immersed in technology, and that's where they feel comfortable. So let's let them feel comfortable and focus on the skills, because it's so exciting to be able to kind of help them to move forward in ways that they couldn't before. I love the fact that if a child is like, I just love this skill and I want to practice it more and I want to learn more about it, you can be like, well, here's a video, here's a thing, here's a couple of worksheets, bang, they're on your Showbie, off you go. Like, that is amazing.
Excellent. And that's a really good segue. And we're going to listen to the news and see what's going on in the world of education. And when we come back, we're going to go and explore some of those tangible things that how technology can really help. And we'll explore the role of technology. We'll talk about a bit about screen time and that perception. And also how, as a parent, and we've both got young children, how do we navigate this world? Because though we're both like, yeah, pro tech, let's use this, it's also quite scary. And how we bring our own children up through this and what we advocate is a tricky minefield, it can seem at times.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK. Home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the programme with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
Teachers, mark your calendars for BetUK 2025, the world's biggest EdTech event. Join over 30,000 educators at the Excel London from the 22nd to the 24th of January. Discover the latest EdTech innovations, network with peers and access hundreds of hours of CPD. Did we mention it's 100% free for educators? Whether you're looking for inspiration or practical tools to enhance your teaching, BET has it all. Don't miss this opportunity to shape the future of education. Register today at uk.betshow.com. That's uk.betshow.com.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The government has published its call for evidence for its wide-ranging curriculum review. In a feature by Schools Week, details of the process are given. The consultation will last for 8 weeks, until November the 22nd. According to the Department for Education, questions are going to be as open as possible, and they welcome responses from all interested parties, including young people and parents. An interim report is scheduled to be published in early 2025, with a final report and recommendations in autumn 2025. The chair of the review said straightforward changes could happen quickly, although government has committed to giving schools a year's notice for major curriculum and assessment reforms. The review also makes clear positives but states there are parts of the system that require improvement, particularly SEND and those pupils from poorer backgrounds. Some potential outcomes are also listed, which could include ways to alleviate some of the pressure and constraints on learners and educators, reduce the assessment burden and consider well-being, and making sure the curriculum is inclusive and accessible for all. The review may also offer commentary on the impact of accountability measures. The chair of the review, Professor Becky Francis, also told Schools Week that the biggest challenge for the review was to ensure its reforms did no harm or have unintended consequences. Alongside the call for evidence, the government has also published a study of curriculum subject trends over time to aid our evidence-led conversation, they said. Some of the data shows significantly higher numbers of students taking Maths A-level, art continuing to thrive at GCSE, but design and technology subjects faring worst over time. Further details of the statistics can be found on the Schools Week website. The Metro News website covers a story about a state secondary school which has made it into the final 3 for the World's Best School Prize for supporting healthy lives. The award was founded by the T4 Education and celebrates schools around the world that really understand their role in fostering healthy habits, behaviours, knowledge and skills. The Hindu Faith School is for pupils aged 11 to 19, and whilst their ethos is drawn from the Vaishnavist tradition of the faith, they are fully inclusive. Anyone who wants to apply to the school is able to. As well as following a traditional curriculum, the free school also teaches extra subjects like yoga, philosophy, ethics and Sanskrit. Their website says, "We put an equal emphasis on the highest academic achievement alongside the development of character and spiritual insight." The 2 other schools in the final are based in Italy and Singapore. The BBC Wales website reports that teachers could be asked to swear an oath against inappropriate relationships with pupils. A motion due to be considered by Flintshire Council could see teachers and school staff pledge in front of a manager not to form intimate relationships with students. It follows the court case of a former head teacher jailed for 17 years after being found guilty of sexual abuse. Education Union NASUWT said introducing an oath would show shocking contempt for teachers and would only bring the teaching profession into disrepute. ASCL has said it would be willing to discuss the proposal. The BBC National News website reports on new guidance for disabled students. The Equality and Human Rights Commission has published new guidance setting out what universities must do to comply with laws. Universities must proactively support disabled students rather than wait for them to ask for help. It follows the death of Bristol University student Natasha Abrahart, whose parents contributed to the new guidance. Universities must now actively seek out and adopt best practice and show real commitment to understanding and meeting diverse needs. Finally, Schools Week reports that some pupils with additional needs will be able to listen to white noise or music during their exams this year. Schools will also be able to use mental health support service referral letters to apply for extra support to ensure young people aren't disadvantaged by long waiting lists. The changes are included in the updated JCQ guidance on adjustments schools can request. SENCOs can now apply for pupils who are classed as having a substantial impairment to listen to music or white noise. This would apply to those with social, emotional and mental health needs or with a sensory impairment such as tinnitus. These adjustments apply to GCSE, A-level, BTEC and T-level qualifications. Schools must make sure devices playing the music or white noise cannot be connected to the internet, and the playlist must be checked. The change meaning schools can use a referral to CAMHS or NHS trusts has also been welcomed, as waiting lists for specialist services are growing. Full details of all the changes can be found on the JCQ website. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
As Joe pointed out there's lots of things that's happening in the ether at the moment with education and what we're talking about tonight. So that's fascinating and seeing where the picture goes. But what I'm interested in is this idea that a lot of teachers out there don't know any different. And it's no fault of their own with some of our experiences. So where can technology be useful for children, especially, let's say, SEN children? Because the phrase I often use is it's necessary for some to not only access the curriculum, but to access the world around them. But it is a useful tool for everyone. And I've done a staff training session this week, just done a few little bits and pieces, things like using an iPad, and you can do it on Microsoft have exactly the same kind of thing as well, where it's just like a reader. So you get rid of all of the gunk and all the adverts. If you're looking at a website, you get the right text, you get the right background, and the access to learning and how you can engage with it goes through the roof, because we've already broken down the four walls of the classroom tonight. But I think there's also breaking down the traditional, this is the way we've always done it. So where have you seen technology really revolutionise and really support those children?
So I think that some of the work that I've been doing is working with special provisions, so specialist independent special schools, and getting to work with some young people who might have complex physical needs but don't have any cognitive disability. So being able to help them to access kind of a more sort of traditional, that's the wrong word, but more kind of usual curriculum. And suddenly the accessibility functions are just like they're essential. And I think that like we talked before about how, like, for some children it's like you have to do that because they have complex needs and they need it, and then it's like it's never going to hurt another child to know that they can zoom in, or as you said, quiet the noise on a web page, or read aloud. Read aloud is great. I use read aloud all the time because I might get to the point where I've just stared at the screen for too much for a day, and I might just need it to read aloud a couple of paragraphs for me, and that's how I want to take in that information. There are so many great accessibility functions that can support young people, which suddenly means that things are accessible to them, and you can give them the power. You can say, well, if you like a blue tint, we can have a blue tint on your screen. If you find that the text is a bit easier to read, if it's a bit bigger, that's fine. And also give them, the regulating apps. There are various apps that can be really helpful for helping young people to regulate. And they might have, you might have a child who is always like 10 miles ahead of everybody else, and you might want to let them go and learn to code independently using one of the coding apps. There are so many things you can do in a classroom that don't then disrupt anybody else because it's in that child's control, that are great. But I also think that what I'm learning working with specialist independent provision is that there's magic to be had in I was talking today to a TA or a support worker who was saying there used to be this magic app that you could speak to. It was like Dragon, and it used to support children in being able to communicate their ideas because it would clean up the dictation and then it would kind of help you to communicate. And I was like, oh, that exists. It still exists. And now it's an app that you can have on your existing iPad. Once upon a time, it was a really, really expensive thing they would have to bring in. They'd have one in a school, they'd wheel it around or whatever. Now it's like everyone can have it. It's fine. The door is open. And like, you know, we use LAMP Words for Life for a lot of children. And we've had children who've gone from completely not being able to communicate to fully being able to interact with their family for the first time in their lives because the tech exists. The thing that I think is difficult, really, really difficult, and I don't know how we solve this problem, is there has been some research that's shown, and I can't remember the I was going to bring like my notes, but I've failed. There's been some research that's shown that it's really difficult to navigate the world of sort of assistive tech in apps. People find it very, very difficult to know what's good, what's helpful, and it's kind of a trial and error. There isn't like a service out there that's sort of saying, this is a good app if you've got X, and if this is a good app if you have needs around Y. And so a lot of people are kind of drowning in what there is out there. And we need more sort of research that shows what's effective, and people, like, we need influencers in that space saying, oh, if you've got this need, this is a really great thing to help you to communicate or whatever. Everyone's sort of like fumbling around in the dark, trying different things. And that's a bit worrying. I know that Kirklees Council, shout out to those guys, are doing some really interesting work looking at how to support, to do like early interventions and how to use sort of AT, virtual reality, apps, etc., to kind of support and take the pressure off the local authorities. And there's some really just interesting stuff out there and simple solutions, but it's time consuming to find them. And you need those people who are able to say, oh, have you just tried this? Because this might be the thing. You need like a little like central font of knowledge who can share that good practice, because it's hard. There's a lot.
Yeah, there's always there's too much in some ways.
Exactly.
They things change all the time, and they put things in until you need it, like really need it.
Yeah.
You don't look for it, but actually those tools can be useful every day.
Yeah. And I don't know if, I'm sure this is the case for you, James. Definitely is the case for me, that sometimes I'll be like, oh, here's a problem I have. Yeah. I'm going to go and find an app that can fix it. And what I will then do is try 50 apps.
Yeah. But what I often find now, so there's a couple of things, and I'll have to show you offline later, that on my iPad, I've got a shortcut built, and Apple have got this where you can basically put the needs in, and they categorize theirs with like vision, auditory and sensory, and you can choose the kind of key things, and it'll give you suggestions of try these inbuilt features. That's amazing. Yeah. But on the back of that, what I've been working on is, let's say you've got dyslexia or dyspraxia, or you've got an auditory thing like that, and then these are one or two things to try first.
Yes, absolutely.
So it gives a teacher an idea of like, yes, this is how I can adapt my practice or adapt the resources for you without standing out. And I think that's really important, because years ago, I worked in a school one-to-one with a visually impaired child. Yeah. And they had this massive monitor that showed everything a teacher had, which the teacher had to be careful, obviously, of what they put up. It wasn't their emails or anything. And she like stood out. Yeah. And actually her vision, yes, she could walk through school, and she went over steps. And I think she got frustrated because she stood out. Now, if you had a coloured overlay on your iPad and you AirPlay it up to your board, no one else needs to see that because it's not there. They make sure that's clear. And I think those things are really, really, really important. That I know we've got a child with 5% vision, and he wouldn't be able to navigate and get through without the technology he uses to have a voice. And I think that's really important, because it's not just necessarily those needs. I remember a story of a child I had in year 5, And he wouldn't say, I taught him twice, taught him in year 3, taught him in year 5, and we had a really good relationship. But none of the traditional means of writing would work for him. And there was this class assembly coming up, and it was more like a class show than anything, actually. And I had a lunchtime where I kept him in with a couple of friends, and we did this green screen news report. And it was the most he ever said. And the next thing was that, I think it was that Friday or something. The kids edited it and everything. And his mum didn't know, and none of the other teachers knew this was going to happen. And there's this big video up on the screen in front of 600 children, in front of all the parents who were there and all the staff, and him talking confidently. And I was like, that's it. You found your voice. Yeah. You found something there that's magical. I think that's so important and so key.
Yeah. And I did a lesson recently with a group of post-19 students, and we were doing making videos, and we were using lots of different interesting sort of tech to support them in being able to kind of put across to like self-advocate. So we were using they were writing scripts, and then we were putting that as like dialogue on the screen. We were having them speak when they felt confident, but also putting, subtitles, etc., and adding in like things to show what they were interested in. And this young man had made this beautiful video with some support, and really complex learning needs and disability. And at one point he screamed, and I was like, oh, because I'm mainstream trained, but I've been doing all of this work to support teachers and coaching teachers around use of tech. So I'm going in and showcasing some of what can be done. And I thought, I've done something really wrong. But it was actually that he just was so excited and wanted to show his key worker that he was screaming for her to come to the room because he wanted to show her the video. And I was like, isn't it lovely that there is something that can unite us all and make us all feel so excited? As simple as seeing yourself on the screen and having that kind of advocacy and being able to show people, like I said, that thing of sharing online is how young people communicate. That's how it works now. And so giving them something that makes them feel like everybody else and like a TikTok influencer or whatever is really important to them, and it allows them to see themselves as the same as everybody else, and I think that is really, really key. And like you said, being able, it levels the playing field. Things that level the playing field and give everybody an access point are essential in special needs education, and we have to start kind of moving to that point. And I think that I've spoken before about in special needs education, in special independent schools, tech can be a little bit scary because you spend a long time getting the equilibrium just right for the students, for yourself, for the complexity of their day and their needs and their therapies and whatever else. And then it's one more thing to come into the classroom to mess everything up. And so teachers can be really resistant to tech, I think even more than in sort of traditional teaching. And trying to convince them to trust it will always be, has been a struggle. But if we can get it right, it's going to change the lives of the young people involved. And, that's really exciting. So, yeah.
And I think not only just levels the playing field, it's authentic. Yeah. Because too often you'd work with children, you do a guided or you may do something else, and they would copy, essentially. Yeah. Whereas this gives them a voice, gives them an option, gives them a safe haven to explore and express themselves. But how do we find that balance? Because there's this word screen time all the time. There's the screen, and I think that has its own perception.
Yeah. I actually got in trouble
yeah.
today because I put on the screen time limit on my children's tablets, and they're in the car on a long journey. And then I got like a panicked phone call from my husband being like, they've run out of screen time and we're still stuck on the M4. What do I do? And I was like, I don't even know if I can change it whilst you're in transit. Put Josie on the phone. So yeah, it's that. We're both in that place at the moment where we're trying to work out, what does technology look like for my child versus what does it look like in my classroom? And I'll admit, in my classroom, I am like, everyone get your iPad out, and that's it. I mean, obviously when I'm online, it's just all day, but it's like, it has become my kind of like go-to because I can adapt it and whatever. But at home, I feel like I'm maybe not as accepting of the technology. I don't know how you feel. What would you think?
I think the word screen time has a bad connotation, first of all. I think the word media use or something like that is better, because if you think about TV, when you look at a lot of the guidance out there, and it is blurry-eyed, and there is cause for getting clearer guidance. And if you look at, the word media use, TVs aren't usually captured in it, or your Alexa or Google or the other ones that I won't say just in case everyone's phones go off. But those things are interacting. And so it's kind of really interesting because, like, I've got a robot I've got from someone, and my son is playing with it. He's built it because he loves Lego. So he's done that. And now he's looking at coding it and driving it and doing all of this. Well, he's using technology, but actually he's creating something with it. So you've got that element of it. You've got the interaction. So like things like times table rock stars, you've got that repeated practice, any maths apps, the fluency, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you've got the consumption.
Yeah.
Where you've got your YouTube and Netflix and social media. Yeah. And so when you talk about screen time, it's not equal. It's not fair with that. And it's really difficult.
I guess there's that thing, like the thing that I get frustrated with my children is like the passive, they've just switched off. And like, I try to be really careful about this because I think I need to switch off. I get to the point in my day where I'm just like, I need to switch my brain off and I'd like to just stare at a screen. And I know that there are healthy and unhealthy ways for my brain to do that. And obviously there are things that I don't permit with my children. I don't really like them watching YouTube, because I don't feel like I can police that in the same way. But like, if they want to watch a Netflix show and I've checked that Netflix show is okay, then fine for a limited amount of time per day. But in the classroom, I am curating an experience with a goal and a learning objective and interactive points. And, we are doing something, and it's collaborative, and we are doing something together, and we are working towards something. And so it's not the same thing. I'm not getting that passive switch your brain off. I'm literally actively asking you to switch your brain on. And I think that is the difference, I guess. And the fact that it's coming on a screen versus a book. And I think that's one of the things that I find most frustrating is like the screen is evil, but the book is fine. And I'm like, it's the same. What's the difference? Show me what the difference is. Yeah. It's the same thing. It's just that
and also,
one is one book
the way we use
it's easier to mark.
The one thing about when you say, well, we're using technology in lessons, sometimes it's just a snippet. Maybe it's a manipulative that I can't get thousands of counters out for place value, but here it is. They're using it to support their writing and their work. They're doing a maths. Great, let's use it because it's there. It could be snippets of check for understanding because it's a quick quiz or assessment or a drag and drop activity that I'm going to do with them, and then we're going to apply it in something else. We deliberately live in a village because I just need, for me, that's my space to get out. And the moment I see green trees, right, that's my calm space. And we all have a calm space. Whether in the middle of a city, we find elements of, like, this is my safe space, this is my calm that we need. And it is that healthy balance. And it's really interesting looking at that. I know there's some companies that are talking about the well-being side of the digital online. And there's some really nice reflective apps out there now that's saying about well-being and capturing it, and you put in your voice and see how you do. But I think there is a balance that's needed, but also there's a perception change. And I wonder what your thoughts on this, that a lot of parents now, and I think, and especially the parents in our cohorts and our schools that I work with, they only had social media when they were late teens, early adults, and now they've got children, and then they've gone to the world of work with it. Navigating it they've never had that. Navigating it as a pupil or student or a young person themselves. So how then do they support their children? And I think there's a disconnect with that, and I think it goes back to that word earlier, relationships, because I think this is a huge thing as a community, as a school. We're educators thinking critically about, this is what we could do, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
But are we bringing our parents along on that and listening to their concerns and the valid concerns that they have?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And I think also having open conversations with them, because one of the things that I find really difficult is that when you do see guidance, because I think it's really hard to find good guidance on these things. I think the research is pretty limited. There is, and a lot of the research sort of says, well, it kind of depends on the parents and everything else that's going on in somebody's life as to how harmful various different things are. If you've got a vulnerable child, then TikTok becomes quite a dangerous thing. If you've got a child who has a really strong set of, social relationships, then it's less dangerous. So the advice isn't great. And I think that sometimes, or what I often see from schools, is that you will get like some blanket letter that's like, have you tried limiting screen time? Or like, it's a really good idea to check the settings on Roblox. And you think, this is too basic. It's not an honest conversation about our fears and your fears. We need to have some dialogue here, and we need to be, honest with each other. And I think that I think we're not doing that yet. And I think that until we get to the point where we feel able to do that, we're going to tie ourselves in knots. And I understand why schools aren't, and I understand why it's scary, but we have to be willing to have those conversations. And my biggest fear working with young people in care particularly is the gulf between a child who is well supported online and a child who is not well supported online is getting bigger and bigger and scarier and scarier. And the dark places are going to exist for every child, but until we're willing to sit there and say, there is a gulf here, how do we save these children? Nothing's going to happen, because there will always be a response that says, well, if you have this conversation with your child, it's not dangerous. And it's like, yeah, but not every parent has the capacity to have that conversation with their child.
And there's a lot of peer pressure. And there's a lot of peer pressure as well. Peer pressure around when to get mobile phones and those. But I think it's the idea that as parents, we also need to stand our ground as well. Like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we do in our house. Yeah. And it is difficult. Really difficult. It is really difficult.
Really difficult. I was speaking to a friend, because people do come and ask me about it, because they know that I work in education and I work in safeguarding and I work in tech. And so they're like, oh, well, can you give us advice about this? And I say, there really isn't any good advice I can give you. You just have to make a decision and stick with it. That's all I can say, is make the decision that works for you and stick with it. And I personally think that, as long as you're very clear with your child about the decisions that you make and how things will work, and that you don't go behind their back and be dishonest about that, be really open about the decision you've made and how this will work, then I think it's healthy, whatever you do. But I'm fascinated by the range of different opinions that my friends, my peers have about their children. I've got friends who are like, they're old enough, they're 5, they can have their own iPhone. And then I've got other friends who are like 18 and that's it. You will get the password for the internet when you're 18. And and every single other possible opinion between those two. Yeah. And I cannot tell you which of those is the correct answer. I just know that it's whatever's right for you and your family. Yeah. As long as you're having dialogue about it and you're willing to listen and have conversations and be honest.
And that's what I say to all the time, is having those open conversations are really important. And it's even within family dynamics. I'll take my children to go and see another family, and it's a completely different ball game. And what I find sad is when there isn't a conversation, there isn't like, but you go to a situation, whether you'll go camping or go to a restaurant or go somewhere else, and they're passively there. They're not in the moment. They're not enjoying it. And it's like live music, and it's like concerts, and it's like that. You're watching it through a screen. How often did you listen to that back?
Yeah.
And I always use the idea, years ago, teachers used to have a little digital camera. They take loads of pictures of a trip and put it in the bottom drawer until they needed it for the next trip. And we need to move away from that somehow. But we can't
it's so
shield
hard.
them as well.
It's
We
so
can't
hard.
shield them.
And that experience of the world that happens through a phone is just so essential to young people, and how they experience a moment. And there was a piece of research, I can't remember where it was, but there was a piece of research that said you actually forget the moment more if you are taking photos of it. So like you will have better recall of something if you are not experiencing it through your phone effectively. And I found that so fascinating, and I'm very mindful about my phone, and I'm terrible with it. I work from home most of the time, so my phone is my worst vice. But I try to be mindful of it. But I also know that it's so complex for children. I can't even imagine how difficult it is for our young people, experiencing social media and everything else when their brains are still forming. It's terrifying. It's really genuinely terrifying. And one of the things that we saw after the pandemic, and I've spoken to lots of teachers who work in post-16 after the pandemic, was that the number of auditory and visual hallucinations went through the roof. Something that you didn't see, it was very, very rare to see in safeguarding before the pandemic. Became really common. And this is only anecdotally, but this is speaking to a lot of post-16 teachers. And I'm sure it was about the fact that during that time, lockdown, all of their experiences were on a screen. And so their brain just got completely confused about what was real and what wasn't real. And suddenly you've got these hallucinations popping up everywhere. And I just think if your brain is still forming and you're getting constant barrage of visual and auditory information on a screen, like what is happening inside there? It's terrifying.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK. Home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the programme with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
Teachers, mark your calendars for BetUK 2025, the world's biggest EdTech event. Join over 30,000 educators at the Excel London from the 22nd to the 24th of January. Discover the latest EdTech innovations, network with peers and access hundreds of hours of CPD. Did we mention it's 100% free for educators? Whether you're looking for inspiration or practical tools to enhance your teaching, BET has it all. Don't miss this opportunity to shape the future of education. Register today at uk.betshow.com. That's uk.betshow.com.
So, Aisha, we've covered a lot of ground tonight. So what's that one thing you're hopeful about that you want our educators or the government or anyone else to listen to about the future?
Oh, there are actually so many things. But I think that the thing that I want to kind of put out there in the universe for today is the thing that I'm doing, the online school part, the AP building students back to school. It doesn't matter where you are. And that's really important. Like, you don't have to be physically in a school. You could be at home. You could be in a care home. You could be in a hospital. You could be at a specialist provision, and we can reach you, which means that I can take incredible educators, and like, I have the best teachers, because I won't accept anything less than that. My teachers are incredible, and I can put them in front of a child who needs them. Like, in the past, it's been the case that you have a really amazing teacher in a school, and that school gets the luck of that teacher, and maybe you get that teacher that year, maybe you don't, or whatever. I can say, well, this is the best teacher. Let's connect them to the 100 children in the country that need them the most. And it doesn't matter where they are. They could be in the Outer Hebrides as long as they've got an internet connection. And that is incredible. And that is going to change how we bring children back into education and how we reconnect children with learning, because every child can have the best teacher. Every child can have the best teacher, and every teacher can work towards that point. I also think that for young people from ethnic minorities, from minority groups, there is an opportunity to connect with somebody who you maybe don't see in your classroom, because there are ways of bringing people together online and saying, okay, well, you want to be a mathematician or a physicist, and you're a brown woman. Let me show you that person exists. You can speak to them, and those things are really, really powerful. And for me, as somebody who did grow up as a minority, I tried to think back to what that might have looked like for me. And I do think it would have been revolutionary for me as like a 15, 16-year-old girl to be like, oh, it does exist. I don't have to fight this fight. It does exist in the world. So I think the thing that makes me hopeful is like, we're able to get rid of like geographical barriers. We've invented like a teleporter. It's just that it's a Teams call, and we can put people in the space and have them connect with one another on a personal level. You know, we talked a lot today about how tech doesn't have to be removing the personal; it can be adding something, and we can do that. And we need to be accepting of the fact that this is a magic thing that can bring people together, and that's really exciting for the future.
Brilliant, and thank you for that. I think it's been a fascinating conversation that will hopefully challenge the status quo and really think beyond those school walls. So thank you to everyone for listening to Teachers Talk Radio. We've had some fascinating shows recently. We've heard it in the playground, fake news and media literacy in partnership with The Economist. earlier today, I know Chris Wilkinson tomorrow is going to be talking about teaching in the USA and the differences that brings. But also I know John Gibbs today was talking about the vital and sometimes misunderstood role of the SENCO. And so to find us, you can search on any of the major podcasting apps, on iTunes, on Apple, with Spotify, and Amazon Tower, as well as Podbean. And so thank you very much. You can visit ttradio.org/listen back. You can follow us on Twitter and all the major social media as well. So thank you for listening. And until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.